Typically, it's a little warm outside to think about Christmas here in the middle of October. But we need to keep on getting ready for Christmas as we explore the evidence and make a compelling argument that Jesus, and only Jesus, is the Messiah, the one spoken of by the prophets. Remember, Jesus himself claimed that the Old Testament prophecies were pointing to him. Luke tells us that when he encountered a couple of followers following the resurrection, followers who were down in the dumps, that he'd been crucified, he told them that it was in fulfillment of God's plan, spoken by the prophets, that he was crucified, but then rose again. He expounded, Luke says, in all the scriptures, the things concerning himself. Up to now, we've seen that Jesus fulfilled the earliest prophecies about the Messiah, found in the Bible all the way back in the book of Genesis, where God promised that all nations would be blessed through Abraham. The Messiah would come from the line of Abraham. God then declared that his covenant would be fulfilled through the next generation of Isaac, the miracle son, born to the aged Abraham and Sarah. The third generation of the promise would point to Jacob. The Holy Spirit spoke through Balaam and said in the book of Numbers, a star would come out of Jacob, indicating that the promised Messiah would be born of the line of Jacob. So the first three generations of the promise, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The books of Matthew, Luke, Acts, and Galatians detail Jesus' ancestry all the way back to Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, giving evidence that he did, in fact, fulfill those prophecies. Well, the next generation is key for our conversation. It is the generation of Jacob's children that the tribes of Israel are identified, and the case continues to get strong. See if we can follow this. Jacob had 12 sons by 4 different mothers, but that's another story. God, by the way, then renamed Jacob Israel. So the sons sort of became the 12 tribes of Israel. I say sort of because one of the sons, Levi, was chosen to be the priestly tribe and therefore was not given a share of the promised land. And because another of the sons, this would be Joseph, received a double portion. Now that's yet another story that he then gave to his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So it ends up being, 12 minus 1 plus 2 ends up being 12 tribes again. Are you confused yet? Well, anyway, Judah is regarded as the royal tribe. And watch what happens. Years later, when the children of Israel are scouting out the promised land, it's time for them to take the promised land that God had already given them, right? And so they send out the spies. You remember the story. You remember how the children of Israel complained? You remember how they rebelled? Do you remember how the spies said there's no way that they can defeat those giants? Well, except for 2 brave ones, Joshua and Caleb. Caleb of the tribe of Judah. Over in the book of Numbers, we read an interesting account. Numbers chapter 13, verse 30. This is when this investigation of the promised land is going on. Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it." The one faithful, loyal voice. And then over in chapter 14, we read verse 6 through 9. Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, who were among those who spied out the land, tore their clothes. This was like an anger in despair. They spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, "The land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them." Caleb speaking out in loyalty to God, and to Moses for that matter. Down in verse 24, then we read this. The Lord speaking here, "My servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him, and has followed me fully, I will bring him to the land where he went, and his descendants shall inherit it." This is where the Lord is speaking judgment to the children of Israel, saying that no, they won't. They'll see the promised land, but they won't inherit it. It'll be the next generation. But he says about Caleb, he will see it, he will inherit, his descendants will inherit. So the blessing continues through Judah, through the tribe of Judah. By the way, just as a side note, Jerusalem is located in the land of the tribe of Judah. And the prophets foretold that the Messiah would come from the tribe of Judah. It actually goes all the way back to Genesis. Genesis chapter 49, all the way back to Jacob. Jacob is on his deathbed, and as was the custom in those days, a father that was dying would gather his sons around him on his deathbed, and he would give a blessing to them, which also ended up being speaking like a prophecy about them. Jacob did that with his sons. And here in verse 10, hear the words that Jacob spoke about his son Judah. "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes." Shiloh, another prophetic reference to the Messiah. The scepter, Jacob's deathbed blessing, the scepter, the symbol of a ruler's absolute power, would remain with the tribe of Judah. And yes, the tribe of Judah is the tribe of Jesus' ancestry.